Greetings, friends. There were extremely high hopes for this year's Davos Economic Forum. Zelenskyy strongly announced that the so-called prosperity plan would be signed there, under which the United States would provide Ukraine with more than $800 billion in the post-war period. And this is actually an enormous amount, which would be enough to rebuild a large number of Ukrainian cities, but unfortunately this has been cancelled. We have more statements proving this, which will supplement our video from yesterday. If you missed it, check the channel. Watch to see how all of this looks like a distraction and a way to delay solving the Ukrainian issue in the world. Why? So that Ukraine, holds back Russia a little longer, weakens its military power a bit more so that the Russians lose a few more of their troops on Ukrainian territory. We have statements from Trump, the Europeans, and Zelenskyy, and we'll break them down now. It's going to be an extremely packed episode, so don't switch off, subscribe to the channel, and make sure to check your likes. So first of all, Akcja Osi reports that the signing of the Ukraine Prosperity Plan in Davos was cancelled. Who could have doubted it? Just yesterday, someone commented under my video saying, "Dennis, you're making things up, your analysis is terrible, and it's absolutely not connected at all. Not even a day has passed, and the information is already confirmed." The Economic Forum in Davos was supposed to be a platform for reaching agreements between the United States, Ukraine, and European countries regarding security guarantees and the reconstruction of Ukraine. However, the conflict around Greenland is pushing these plans aside. Just yesterday, I said that the conflict around Greenland is just a cover to simply prolong the continuation of the war in Ukraine. And somehow this needs to be explained to Europeans, to European voters in their countries, to Ukrainians in Ukraine, to Americans in America, and now you'll understand why. A Ukrainian official reported that the signing of the prosperity plan by the leaders was cancelled, while an American official denied that a signing date had been set and said that the plan still needs further work. So, in fact, Zelenskyy's statement that something would be signed in Davos did not correspond to reality. According to Joral Axios, Donald Trump still plans to meet with Zelenskyy and several European leaders in Davos, but the White House does not expect a breakthrough from this meeting. So everything will continue as before. Next, Sky News published an interesting article. They report the following information. Trump admitted that he might have been misinformed about Greenland. Basically, it's exactly what we talked about yesterday, that they're now fueling the conflict over Greenland. Although this is just a soap bubble so that later this conflict can be resolved like that, and at the same time, the issue of ending the war in Ukraine can be postponed further, which is exactly what's happening. He already admitted he was misinformed, so let's see what happens next. Donald Trump admitted that he might have been misinformed about the purpose of sending European troops to Greenland. He told Prime Minister Keir Starmer of the United Kingdom during their recent call. Just a reminder, I don't know who gave him the information or what was passed on, but I want to remind you that Denmark invited its NATO allies to send a few, probably some commanders, a few military personnel, so that it would be possible to plan and analyze the situation around Greenland to understand how to defend it with NATO forces and what might happen next, and that there are exercises planned for the future, which will also take place in Greenland. So what did Trump do, right? He imposed measures on all the countries that were sending 2 or 3 soldiers there. The tariffs that are supposed to take effect from February 1st, now it's not even certain that they will be implemented. That's why during the conversation, Starmer tried to convince them that the deployment of European troops was aimed at solving the security problem for the United States, not countering American threats. A concession by the American president could become a way to de-escalate tensions around Greenland, diplomats believe. For some reason I have absolutely no doubt now that the conflict between the Europeans and Trump will be resolved and settled in the coming weeks. We can see that all the decisions concerning Ukraine have already been postponed for later, to be resolved somewhere down the line. It's unclear when. At the end of the year, Zelenskyy said that the peace plan would already be ready. He said it was 90% done with only the hardest 10% left, but now they're saying the peace plan is only 70% ready. You know, this just looks like ordinary disinformation. They're manipulating these percentages. We realize the peace plan isn't ready, nothing is prepared, and there are no security guarantees. Everything said before is meaningless. And in a few weeks, when the situation around Greenland has completely calmed down, they'll return to the Ukrainian issue again. They'll say, yes, people are dying there. We need to end this war. Again, they'll begin their dances in the coalition of powerful and willing, unbreakable with the Americans, security guarantees, billion-dollar payments, and more. But in reality, we see that it's just an empty gesture that leads absolutely nowhere. The only thing it leads to is what's happening now in Ukraine, which is Ukraine returning to the Middle Ages, when in Kiev they haven't even managed to repair all the damage that was caused there a little less than 2 weeks ago. Today, the Russians struck again, and everything starts over. Only the situation is getting even more tense because there are fewer materials for repairs. The weather is getting a little better now, but the frost is still holding strong. And the consequences that will need to be fixed are getting worse and deeper. And some part of Kiev today, and actually all of Ukraine, is in a very unfavorable condition. Plus, yesterday there were reports that the Russians will continue to target the main substations that allow electricity generated at nuclear power plants to be transmitted across Ukraine. In fact, they already did this morning. There are already reports that the Chernobyl nuclear power plant has been disconnected from external power, and it was also reported that some substations from another nuclear power plant, either Rivne or Khmelnytsky, as we understand, have also been affected. They also lost several substations there, so most likely generation has dropped even more, and the situation with electricity will be at least the same. Bad as it is today. But they're dancing around Greenland. Here, this issue is discussed only in the Ukrainian information space. Beyond that, no one is interested. Yes, some individual countries are sending some aid, some generators, a little bit of everything. Someone is sending something. But overall, we see that this doesn't improve the situation. It doesn't make things better. You can send unlimited transformers, generators, and substations. But if the Russians keep striking Ukraine at this rate, there will be little left of the Ukrainian energy system, basically. And we can already see that now. Against this backdrop, what is Zelenskyy doing? He said today he was answering questions from journalists, and he said that he will not go to Davos today. At the time of recording, he said, I choose Ukraine over the Economic Forum. If the documents are ready, I'll go to Davos. For now, I'm staying in Ukraine. Coordinating the work of energy services. Tell me, please, is it within the president's authority to coordinate the work of energy services, or should it be someone else? Do we have tens of thousands of officials nationwide appointed to coordinate this? Why Zelenskyy is dealing with this is completely unclear, but the situation is what it is. Moving on. Trump sent Zelenskyy an invitation to join the Peace Council, reports the Financial Times. The Peace Council is the same group that Trump is assembling to end the war in Gaza, and after that, probably to end the war in Ukraine as well. But the problem is that he has already invited Orban, Putin, Lukashenko there, and I don't know whether they agreed or not, but it doesn't matter. He invited Macron, but Macron refused, and Trump started openly threatening him and basically all of France. Zelenskyy hasn't responded yet. He said that he feels a certain hesitation because among those invited to the council are Putin and other leaders who support Russia's war. Before accepting the proposal, he wants to understand how the council will work, whether it will actually function. Regardless of whether it will replace the council currently being discussed by Ukrainian and American negotiators as part of the peace plan to end the war with Russia, and what role is assigned to Ukraine in it. So we see that if Macron immediately said no, then Zelenskyy can't do that because some negotiations are happening with the Americans. Something about that bothers me. And we see that he doesn't even rule out the possibility that he will be together with Putin, with Lukashenko, in some kind of peace council, in some sort of freak group that is supposed to influence something. Although, in fact, I personally think that this is just ordinary populism, which will either fall apart now or will fall apart later. At the very least, when Trump retires, when his presidential term is over, In general, we see the conclusion that Ukrainians are still being led by the nose. Everything that's happening now regarding these negotiations doesn't have any positive impact on what's happening in Ukraine. In Ukraine, people are sitting without electricity, without heat, sometimes even without water in some cases, and that's it. Everyone was told to sit and endure. They'll do whatever they can, although we see that those same European leaders, those same Americans, could actually do much more for Ukraine. But again, there's absolutely no reason to blame them for anything, because first of all, this must be handled within the country, and at minimum, we need to fight corruption, even a little. There should be real verdicts, punishments, and confiscations to reduce how often this occurs, but it still isn't happening less often. We see that some investigations are going on, but it all comes down to the fact that someone stole $1 billion, paid $1 million, and then just went on with their life. And unfortunately, that's the situation we have today. What do you think about this? Write in the comments. It would be very interesting to hear and read your opinion. I wish everyone a great day. See you next time.